Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast. Be sure to hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops or a video drops. Also, you can drop a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts for us. And I know I didn't have an episode on Saturday, but, we're slowly coming back from the bye week and all these things. Wanted to do a discussion because we're technically kind of the halfway point of the New York Giants season this year. And I wanted to bring on BigDash knows. He's at 900 some odd subscribers. He's only a few away from 1,000, so let's get him there. Let's start right off the bat. Your thoughts on the 2022 season, Dash?
Man, pleasantly surprised, man. If I'm going to be honest, going from beginning of the season, what I thought, going into the preseason, I thought we were going to be better than last year, but I did not expect the start that we had, and I'm just excited about it, man. I'm just excited. Um, Everything I thought Wink was going to be pretty much turned out to be that. I know in the beginning we thought, oh, between Mike Kafka and Brian Dable, who was going to call the plays, and then we see Mike Kafka got that too, and I actually like that because it gives Dable the chance to actually be the head coach and just manage everything else. So I always like that. But yeah, man, I'm pleasantly surprised with the season so far. What about you,
I
man?
would I would use those words to describe it as well. I mean, the defense, though under talented in some areas, I mean, just the way they're playing, the way we're just grinding out football games. I mean, how many double digit comebacks the Giants have had this season, whether it's on the back of the
Yeah,
defense or Daniel Jones or Saquon Barkley. I mean, just a one word to describe this team is very resilient, and
yeah,
hopefully they pick that up through the second half. I mean, it gets a little tougher in a couple of game stretch when we have the Commanders look a little bit nicer as
they're coming
we've
along.
seen in the last few weeks. But the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, that's going to be an interesting game. Then Commanders at home, then the Eagles at home, then the Commanders on the road. And
Yep.
then later on, the last game of the season is actually in Philadelphia. So, we'll see how long they could, of course, stick around with some of these cats. And, maybe a little later on, we'll get into possible playoff stuff and talk whatever. But let's start out with the offense. And one of the storylines coming into this year was Daniel Jones, just the
Yeah.
player himself. Is he going to improve? How much is he going to improve? Personally, I would like to know your timeline on Daniel Jones based on your thoughts, starting from when he was drafted to now. So, what you thought of him his
Yeah.
second year, some of the issues and all that stuff. I'll let you take the floor.
Yeah. When we first drafted Daniel Jones, I like everybody else, surprised, shocked. Um, really didn't do a lot of research on Daniel Jones. I was a big Dwayne Haskins guy coming out of college. That in that draft, but also Josh Allen too. I thought we were going to go defense in that draft. So when we got him, I was like, well, okay, let's see what happens. Um, and then the preseason happened, and he got the nickname Danny Dimes in the preseason. So I was like, okay, well, let's go. And then I was different from a lot of people because I really thought Eli was on his last leg. Some people still thought he had a chance, with just a running back. So when we lost those first two games, I was one of those few people that were ready for Daniel Jones. I was like, my main thing was like, if we're gonna lose, I'd rather lose with a rookie in there than to lose with possible Hall of Famer. Well, I think it's gonna be a Hall of Famer, Eli Manning. And then he started off hot, man. Won the game in Tampa Bay next week with the against the Redskins at the time, or the Washington football team at that time. And I was sold. I was sold even with the turnovers, even with the fumbles. I kind of said, chalk it up to him being a rookie. I liked the numbers at the end of the year, and I was like, okay, well, we got us a guy. Sherman got fired. Everything else happened, and then it went all downhill after that for the most part. Injuries to Saquon Barkley, not really having the wide receiver core in there. Outside Darius Slayton, who had his best 2 years, his rookie year, and his second season with Daniel Jones. And then it just was the Joe Judge and the Jason Garrett show after that. And a lot of people, including myself, were ready to go ahead and throw DJ in the Hudson and do that. But you know, one thing I will say is that I'm a Giants fan first, no matter what the name is on the back of the jersey. And if Daniel Jones is going to be our quarterback going into this year, I was like, fine, I'm just going to ride with Daniel Jones. But if I just fast forward it, because going over all those that second and third year, it's not worth it. It was just heartache after heartache, disappointment after disappointment. But going into this year, you can really see some of the progression in Daniel Jones. Now it's not fantastic numbers as far as the stat line goes, but just a lot of the decisions he's making. He's not turning the ball over crazy. He's not fumbling. The interceptions are not an issue anymore. Now everybody wants him to throw for 300 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns in a game, but right now that's not our game. And I'm not saying that Daniel Jones is going to be the future quarterback for the New York Giants, but right now he is my quarterback, and I like what I see so far. I like what I see so far from him because of where he came from and where he is right now.
Definitely, he's made strides, and
Yeah,
I think one of the things that just hovers over everything, whether it's the stats or this, that, and the other thing, is the fact that we're winning.
yeah,
I remember being in a stream with the Big Blue crew or whoever I was talking to, and it's just stupid that the record would be used against him. But
hmm,
now that he's got a coaching staff in place,
yeah,
and also once again, like the turnover numbers, and people will have their different theories about whether Kafka and Dable are truly hiding Daniel Jones in this offense. I mean, I still once again think he's playing well. He's had a couple of games where he's carried us on the whole offense on his back, really.
yeah,
The Jaguars game, you could probably make a case for the Packers game towards the end, the resiliency.
definitely.
So,
Yeah,
there's a ton of games you could point out that, he's been the guy in some of those games that puts us, in
yeah.
front and obviously to win. Now, heading on to a different player, different storyline. And I remember you specifically had some grim thoughts on this guy coming into the season based off a quote he said, which was "stay on that side."
Yeah,
That's Saquon Barkley.
yeah.
Has your perspective totally just turned to 360?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, 180, absolutely 180 on Saquon
Hmm.
Barkley. Because as you remember, I was so disappointed because one thing about Saquon Barkley that rookie year, fantastic numbers. Everything we thought he was going to be, he was. And then the injuries started coming. And then, they kept on piling on it in the down years and things like that. And I was like, you know what? Um, if he's not gonna do something for this team, we need to get something for him. And that was my thoughts. I thought he was kind of soft for his size. Never ran like a 230-pound man. And this season, whether whether we pissed him off or not, he is running hard. He looks better than he's looked ever before. A lot of people said he's back to the old Saquon Barkley. I'm like, no, we've never seen Saquon Barkley like this. We've never seen him, be this physical when running the ball, and I like it. And absolutely 180 on Saquon Barkley. And I did a video, apologized for it and everything like that because I remember my main argument was this. I said if Saquon Barkley has a fantastic year, but we're still losing, you trade him at the deadline to get whatever you can get for him. Now Saquon Barkley is balling. We're winning, and you absolutely resign that man. Because if you can win with him putting up numbers like he's doing, then you absolutely keep that man. Absolutely. But yeah,
And,
total
and
180 on that man.
yeah, total 180. I mean, he's even you could say, well, this guy's playing well, whatever. Saquon's the most talented offensive player we have. And,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
even though there's some, I would say doubts by people, oh, what does running back matter? Oh, he's old. He's older for a player, whatever. It's just that, like, even let's just say you do get a new quarterback next year, or you keep Daniel Jones, whatever they go. Do you really want Saquon gone and you have to retool it over again? Like
That's right.
I'm
Yeah.
totally, in my personal opinion, prepared for the fact that we might actually have a worse record next year because
Mhm.
we're going to get some more guys in, and the fact that we probably will be playing a tougher schedule. Hence, Buffalo, they were 9-7 in what was it? Brandon Bean's first year with Sean McDermott in 17, and then the next year was 6-10. So, they had 3 more losses on the record. And obviously, that was Josh Allen. They were getting some guys in there. So I'm prepared for it, but I'm also living in the moment right now. Speaking of skill positions and all that sort of stuff, my worry, at least heading into 2022 in terms of skill positions, was actually the tight end spot a little bit more than the wide receivers. Now, Daniel Bellinger has been out with an eye injury. But overall, in my personal opinion, I think the tight end position has excelled a little bit better than the wide receiver spot. Uh, Thoughts on that, the tight end position? And did you really figure that the wide receiver position in terms of depth and production would be this bad?
I didn't expect it to be this bad. I didn't expect Galladay to be injured for as long as he's been injured. I didn't expect the issues with Kadarius Toney and for him, to not be a New York Giant anymore. So like going into the season, I was like, we can get the best out of Kenny Galladay. We have a whole new system. He should be able to thrive in this system. And then, whatever happens, happens. And if it's the hip, if it's his dedication, if it's the attitude, we didn't know what was going on. And then the whole Kadarius Toney stuff. So no, I expected the wide receiver room to actually be pretty good. I did have question marks at tight end. When we drafted Daniel Bellinger, he might have been the only tight end that I did not look at all. As far as a lot of my scouting when I going into like mock drafts and things like that, didn't know who he was at all. As soon as they called his name, I was like, you know what, let me go ahead and do some research on the guy, and quickly I found out, one of the best blocking tight ends in college football, has sure hands and is sneaky athletic, and when we got him in the building, I looked at the depth chart at tight end, and I was like, you know what? By default, this guy has to be the starter. Has to be. I didn't believe in Ricky Seals Jones. Um, I, Jordan Aikens doing pretty good back with the Texans now. He's contributing, and then it was Austin Allen, Myrick and stuff like that. So I thought the tight end room was going to be a weakness. I did not think that Daniel Bellinger was going to step up the way that he stepped up this quickly. And even in the games that he missed, he went from being a guy that, okay, he can be a starter to a guy that we actually miss, in those games. So pleasantly surprised again with Daniel Bellinger. Wide receiver room, uh, heavily disappointed.
Definitely agree on that aspect. And then moving a little more towards another position we've been talking about for so many years. But I'll start with this. Give your thoughts, little description on each of the guys we've seen start a little bit this year on the offensive line. So that would be Andrew Thomas, Ben Bredesen, Josh Azudu, John Feliciano, Mark Lewinsky, and Evan Neal.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll start on the left side. Andrew Thomas, I think everybody knew he was going to take steps towards being, the solid left tackle. But we didn't think, well, I'll speak for myself. I didn't think he was going to make this type of leap. We saw his ability in college. He was the most pro ready, as they said, coming out. And then, you have the injuries to the ankle. You see Becton and Christian Worth, getting all pro playing well. And was it Jedrick Wills or Williams too was playing good. And you're like, okay, maybe we drafted, the worst tackle out of the bunch. And then the second season, he improved a little bit more, but then still had the ankle issues. And then this year, I don't know what Bobby Johnson did, but he's at an all pro level. And I love the way Andrew Thomas is playing. I do think he will be an all pro this year and the first all pro in a long time that the Giants have had. Now, going to left guard, Ben Bredesen, I thought he was coming along before he got hurt. He was actually probably improving the most out of all the offensive linemen outside of Andrew Thomas. And then, he gets the knee injury. But I was actually rooting for Zudo to be the starting left guard. And that was before Shane Lemieux had went down. I wanted Azudo in there because I thought, if he's going to be the future guard, I want him to build that chemistry with Andrew Thomas. Because you remember we did like the musical chairs. It was a little bit of Bredesen, a little bit of Azudo, and things like that. I was like, you know what? Well, let's just keep Azudo in there if he's going to be the guy for the future. But then you see Bredesen take off. And then it was like, okay, well, if Bredesen's going to be the guy, let him get all those snaps, and then all the injuries happen. Not when I moved to center, Feliciano, he has some bright spots, but I think the bad outweighs the good with Feliciano. I don't think he's where we need him to be as far as pass blocking. I do like when he pulls. He's a good run blocker, but if you're trying to do this scheme, and I don't think we're running the offense the way that Dable actually saw it before the season started, I do think they want to pass a little bit more instead of depending on Barkley so much. But it's hard to do that when you're getting pushed up in the middle with Feliciano. Definitely a position of need, I think, going into next year in the draft. Outside of that, um, Lewinsky, no issues there. I did a video about grades for Lewinsky, and I gave him a B because you never hear his name, and if you never hear an offensive lineman's name, that means he's doing pretty good. So solid for Glowinski, and then Evan Neal, of course, struggled in the beginning, was coming along, and then he gets injured too. So it's a lot of things going on with the offensive line, but at the end of the day, I give them a solid B as far as progress. Them growing together and meshing and being productive. And we saw that earlier in the year with uh, us having one of the best rushing offenses in the league.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the offensive. This is like, and it just shows how our standards have gone down with the play of football. Is that like this is a league average to slightly below average offensive line, and we're still semi complaining about it, but at the same time, it's giving Daniel Jones, I would say, an ample time to throw. And also solid running lanes. I mean, they did solid against the Jacksonville Jaguars, third best run defense, I believe, in football. But then you go against the Seahawks, and they lost that game. They couldn't get Saquon going, and they were ironically one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. But yeah, I mean, pretty much echo what you said. Thomas, all pro. I mean, I was, never really giving up on him in his first year. I knew it was going to be struggles and whatever. The second year, he stepped up. He was, obviously there was like a difference in Daniel Jones's play, in my opinion, when he went out early in the season in 2021, and then obviously just a huge step up, and he's finally getting the respect that he deserves. As far as the rest of the offensive line goes, I mean, I'm having patience with Azudu. He's a third round pick. He's got some very good footwork and athleticism, but also some other stuff in terms of IQ and getting really used to the speed of the game. I thought Bredesen was doing well, and he really wasn't known as a run blocker coming into this year, but he's improved in that facet. I know PFF graded Feliciano as one of the best offensive players against the Seahawks. I really didn't see that. I just think that defenders have the upper hand a lot of the time against him. Glowinski's gotten better over the last few weeks, and Evan Neal is Evan Neal. He struggled mightily against the Cowboys, but has improved since. And jumping into, once again, a little bit more about the offensive line, I know micromanaging isn't necessarily ideal in a rebuild, but would you and do you think that one of these three, once they come back from injury, Gates, Lemieux, Bredesen, should be put in some spots on the offensive line, kicking out John Feliciano out of center? Now, obviously, positives you could think of is just a slightly improved play, but the negatives is like, all these guys are coming back injured. And Feliciano, he's really, obviously Glowinski's next to him. They probably have a rapport. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so of course I'm gonna go with Nick Gates. Now I don't want to mess up the chemistry that's going on with those guys that they have right now. Even though I'm surprised that Gates came back and did as well as he did. Coming back, I thought he had some eye-opening um, plays last week in that Seattle game. He was actually able to get to the second level and be solid. So if Nick Gates is healthy and improving, I absolutely think, and it might be too late for this season, but going into next year, you absolutely give him a shot to get his center spot back. When I'm looking at Pert, is Pert going to be a guard? That's my main thing when it comes to Pert. Is he going to be a guard? Are they even going to keep him? Because they're going to make a decision on him pretty soon if they're going to actually keep him or not. And here's my thing: if he can play, if they can get some work at guard from Pert, then he might be worth keeping as far as for depth. But outside of that, I don't know. I don't know what per Shane Lemieux, definitely a depth guy. Can play guard, can play center. I think you hold on to him too. I forget if he's up for a contract this year. Is this his third or fourth year? It's third.
After next year, yeah, this is his third year. After next year would be the contract.
That's right, because he came in with Andrew Thomas. That's right. They
Yes.
were both rookies at the same time. Yeah, I think you keep a guy like Lemieux because he has that toughness and some versatility to play both guard and center. Pert might be the odd man out. I don't think anybody's going to shed a tear over Pert. But Gates, if I had to pick between the three, and only could keep one of them, it's going to absolutely be Gates. Um, with the injury, like I said, with him coming back and looking the way that he looked in that game in Seattle, he's only going to get healthier. He's only going to improve. He has a steel rod in his leg right now, so you don't have to worry about that bone, breaking again. But yeah, Gates would be the guy that I would hold on if I was forced to pick between the three. But Gates, Lemieux, if I can have my way, both of those guys stay and become quality depth guys, and Gates can also, push to be the center.
And just an add-on question, kind of like what happened in 2020, where Will Hernandez was like the starter in the first 7 games, then he got COVID, and Lemieux took over.
Yeah,
Do you
same.
think Zudu is in for the rest of the year, despite maybe Bredesen coming back?
Um, it just depends. I think Zudu is growing, but I don't think he's done enough in these games that Bredesen has been out. But it is a pretty serious injury. It's a low grade strain on the knee, but yeah, I don't think Zudu has played well enough to actually beat out Bredesen. Now, if they have an equal playing field, I don't know what the coaches would do. I really don't know. I'm trying to think about it now. Like who, if Bredesen comes back, do you just put him in there? It just depends on these next couple of games because Bredesen, you figure he was out 2 games ago. Zudu's played those games, and now it's probably gonna be another 2 games before you get him back. So because he was put on IR. So yeah, you know what? If Zudu continues to grow and look good, you probably leave Zudu in there. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for developmental purposes, you might want to do that. I mean, it's I don't think it's going to get any easier because I mean, the Texans, they're going to be they're going to be a solid matchup for us. It's not like it's going to be a blowout. Lions, you could apply the same thing, but once you get to the Cowboys, where he didn't play a snap against them on Monday Night
Yeah,
Football, the Eagles are going to be now. I don't know if because I was watching the Texan Eagle game. I don't know if Fletcher Cox is seriously hurt or he came back in the game. That Jordan Davis, I know he's injured right now, but he's going to be a very fierce
yeah,
challenge. When you get up against that Washington front, when you get up against that Minnesota front, it's going to get harder.
yeah,
And you know what? If you're sticking with uh, Josh Azudu right now over some of the guys you have like Jack Anderson and Devery Hamilton, you might as well just leave them in for the rest of the year.
yeah,
Continue to grow these guys
yeah,
and see what you got at year's end. Um,
yeah. Things happen for a
but
reason too.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So it could be that Zudu is the guy that's supposed to grow next to Thomas, and let's figure out that position as fast as possible, in my opinion.
Yes, yeah, yes, absolutely. So, um, now, in your opinion, we were talking about expectations earlier. Has the O line done better with expectations than the wide receiver core?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have nothing at wide receiver. I mean, Darius Slayton is playing. It took forever for them to play him, but as far as comparison goes, offensive line, well, let me say this: wide receiver is probably the worst group we have on the team right now. Period, and that goes offense and defense as far as a room total. So yes, offensive line is definitely playing better than, and we're getting more production out of them, way more than a wide receiver room.
And then one final question for the offense. What are your thoughts on now? I know he caught some heat over this last game. Thoughts over on Mike Kafka as a first time OC?
You know what? I'm happy with Mike Kafka, and for the reason you just said, he is a first time offensive coordinator, and then he had a hard job coming in with the Giants. Developing a scheme with Dable, trying to make it his own. Outside of Dable's influence, and I that last game I didn't like the Wildcat that early in the game. Um, I don't like the late starts, having to, make those halftime adjustments. But if you look at the Chicago game, that was a fast start. If you look at the Jaguars game, we went right down the field passing the ball. So, he's still learning. So I'm going to give him that benefit of the doubt as, it's a learning curve, first time offensive coordinator at all. And but I am happy with what Mike Kafka is doing. I do think that there's some bread and butter plays that we should be using more. Um, but he's still trying to figure out what we can and can't do. So I understand that he's still trying out new plays, but I think we should stick more with what's working, sprinkle in a little bit of the pass game. But right now, this offense is Saquon Barkley and then everybody else.
Moving on to the defense, similar question. Thoughts on Wink Martindale in his first year as a defensive coordinator with the Giants?
Man, I love Wink, man. I love Wink. As soon as he was announced that he was going to be the defensive coordinator, I was a little bit upset because I remember when Dable first got hired, and we were like, "Well, if Patrick Graham wants to stay, he can stay." And I'm like, oh no, what are we gonna do? The soft shell defense, and then when he took that Las Vegas Raiders job, I was like, yes. Now who are we gonna go with? As a DC, and then Wink Martindale was at the top of a lot of people's lists. Once we got him, I did a deep dive into his defensive schemes, watching a lot of tape of the Ravens, and I was like, yeah, we got a guy that can make some plays here. And I'm happy with Wink Martindale right now. And then a lot of the things people were scared was like, oh, he blitzes so much, and he leaves his cornerbacks on an island. But meanwhile, I would say our passing defense is better than our running defense right now.
I would say the same thing. You know, I would have to give a lot of credit to the DB coach, which we'll get into in a little bit.
Yes, yes,
Um, but I didn't necessarily have too many worries. I kind of wanted Patrick Graham to leave because, like, yeah, he had some quote unquote rapport with Brian Daboll
yeah,
from New England, but at the same time, he just wasn't going to be the same with Dable like he was with Judge because they were friends, and
yeah,
it's kind of convenient in a way, I should say, because obviously we're doing better with our defense than he is with his.
yeah.
Because I think this season now, of course, it could be framed on coaching adjustments or whatever. They've blown 3 17 plus point leads with
Yeah.
the Raiders, so I'm
Includes one
happy
today,
he.
right?
Yes, that was against the Jaguars actually, so I'm
Mhm.
happy he stayed on that side. But one of the players that needed to really thrive this season in order to really in the possibility of getting another contract with the Giants, and he's really doing a great job. Probably one of the best, if not the best player on the defense right now. How exciting has it been to watch Dexter Lawrence thrive at the defensive tackle, nose tackle position?
Yeah, man. Can't say I'm pleasantly surprised because I kind of expected it. Um, when we drafted him to be like, in a lot of people's opinion, the nose tackle, and he played out of position for a few years. And I expected him to do well moving to the nose tackle, but I didn't expect him to be the monster that he is right now. Another guy that I feel like if he keeps on doing what he's doing now, he's an All-Pro defensive player. The man has shown that he's given everybody headaches, whether it's the guard or lining up directly over the center. He's a handful. And is he leading the team with sacks? I believe he is, right?
He's got 4 on the season, so I'm gonna guess yes.
I think he is. And look at it. That's a nose tackle. Doing the tackles for loss, pressures. He's running down quarterbacks to the sideline in the Carolina game. So yeah, love what Dexter Lawrence is doing. Happy that we picked up his 5th-year option. I was like, kind of surprised at it because I don't think he deserved the 5th-year option at the time, with his production. But I'm absolutely glad that they, went ahead and did that because now we have him for another year. I do think they're going to actually extend him still, at the end of this season, before he even gets into his 5th-year option. But like you said, man, Dexter Lawrence is balling right now. He is absolutely the best player on the defense, hands down. You know what? We're going to talk about the defense as a whole. So he to me, he's the second best player on defense right now. Second best.
Who's your first?
Julian Love, man. Julian Love has
Wow.
surprised me. Yeah, I know, right? That's the same thing I said when I wrote it because I did a video on Julian Love, and I was, at the time and I'm saying it, I'm like, wow, I'm really saying this about Julian Love, but the plays that he's made in Wink system, in the end zone, deflections, leading the league. I mean, leading the team in tackles, and nobody's even close to him as far as second place. Um, sacks, tackles for losses, pass deflections, only interception we have on the team right now. I don't think he's an All-Pro like Dexter Lawrence is, a game record, but I think as far as expectations go, I thought we drafted his replacement in Dane Belton. And then now it's looking like Julian Love needs to be that second guy with McKinney, and he's just as important right now as McKinney right now in his offense. I mean, sorry, in his defense this year.
He's really turning into, now that I think about it, somewhat of a clutch defensive role player.
Yes.
Sack against Carolina, interception against Baltimore.
Yep.
Maybe we have a few more of those going down the stretch.
Yeah, man.
but I've been rooting for him ever since he was drafted because I mean I'm a Notre Dame fan, so
I like
I
them.
have loved.
Always liked them.
Yeah. I mean, and then like, obviously, he had a weird couple of years with the Giants, didn't know if he was going to come back. I had a concern about the safeties coming in this year, and then obviously it seems that we're proving ourselves wrong or they're proving us wrong. Talking about another role player who is older, but I think for the first time in years we have a guy who is a scheme fit player. Um he's actually doing his job unlike guys from Betcher's scheme, guys from
Oh
Graham's
boy.
scheme. I'm talking about Jihad Ward.
Oh
How do
man.
you assess his play, and do you think he deserves maybe another 1 year contract?
I think Jihad Ward is the tempo setter for the defense. In every game, he's been the first guy that you see set the tone in all of them. Whether it was the first game against Derrick Henry, setting the edge and tackling Henry, to getting up in the Green Bay game. Absolutely the tempo setter. When he first got here, I was like, I saw a little bit of tape. I thought he had violent hands. I thought he could set the edge. But I thought he was going to be more of a defensive end in this 3-4. And I was like, it might be a mistake standing him up at outside linebacker. And I was wrong. I was wrong a couple times this offseason. Pleasantly surprised. Also, I know I'm a big Quincy Roche fan. And so when Quincy Roche was initially cut from the 53, I was like, well, that's our third best outside linebacker. Um, but they went with Ward. They kept Timon Fox and guys like that. But Ward has been another surprise for me. Again, I thought he was pretty good, but I didn't think he would be like the leader that he is on the defense. And I do consider him a leader because he does set the tone. Um, and a lot of people feed off of him.
Definitely. So it seems like a stupid question, but for a first round pick, and I'm not declaring anyone a bust or anything, but for a first round pick, would you like to see more production out of Tibbs, though he's been held a ton in the games he's played so far?
Yeah. I was disappointed, with the injury going into the season. That Cincinnati game with the low cut to the knee. And I just wanted to see him play. You all that expectation, the status, the brand, like people say. I just wanted to see Tibbs make plays on the field, and we didn't see that for the first few games. And then when he did get on the field, it was a little lackluster. He was a little rusty still, and things like that. But I'm like, he's gonna come along. He's gonna come along. And then in the biggest spot, you saw him do some things. Um, in that Baltimore game, he got his first sack, happened to be a sacked fumble, and pretty much what closed the game, in Baltimore. So, um, yes, I do want to see more as far as sacks go. He is getting held a lot, and he's not getting those calls. And with the bye week coming, I'm pretty sure that the Giants spoke with the referee, all those crews and things like that. Let them know that be on the lookout for these things because he is getting held like crazy. But yeah, because he's the first round pick, because he's the hype. At one point in time, he was the number one prospect in coming out of college. Yes, you do want to see more, but the pressures are up. He might not be getting home, but he's being felt, if that makes sense. But of course, you want to see those numbers, add up as far as sacks go. And I do think they'll come. Um, I do think they'll come. I still think he has a chance to possibly get double digits. Might be hard, but still. But yes, as far as production goes, I did expect a little bit more, but I see the talent.
Definitely. Moving on to another player from the Andrew Thomas class. Uh, the last 2 years, well, I mean, I would say more last year, have looked grim for Tay Crowder. Sometimes positioned at the Mike linebacker, sometimes positioned the Will linebacker. I think he got less snaps than Micah McFadden in the last game, and
Yes.
he's been on and off for a seventh round pick, and you can't expect too much. But do you think he'll be tossed at the end of the year, or is he a depth piece this crew should keep along? Like, what are your thoughts on him?
Um, I think he's in the prototype, or you would call him a constant overachiever, Tay Crowder, which is a good thing. He was Mr. Irrelevant. Um, he did have some good plays for us, but he doesn't start for any other team. I don't think that's something that people would even think about. He's not a starter on any other team. I do like that he is kind of all over the place, but he's inconsistent. He'll have a good game and then he misses tackles in another game, or even in the same game. He makes a great play and then he misses a tackle, or somebody gets tight end beats him or something like that. So I like the fact that he's able to make plays and be a guy coming from Mr. Irrelevant, but I think he's a depth guy. I think he's sub package maybe, maybe not even because he can't cover like I think. But just coming from where he came from, being Mr. Irrelevant, being able to make some plays, the big hit on Derrick Henry in the first game. I remember the scoop and score his rookie year, things like that. He's been around the ball constantly. Doesn't always make the play, but I mean he's been solid for us. Not anything great, not anything horrible. Just a solid guy. But if he's up for a contract, I think they probably move on with the guys that we have now. Like you said, McFadden is a guy who came along in his last game. He had a pretty slow start too. Everybody's waiting for Darian Beavers to come back because he was looking like he was going to absolutely be the starter. Probably beat out Blake Martinez for the spot and play next to Tate Crowder. But yeah, I wouldn't cry over Tate Crowder. Right now, I do like what he brings to the table, but I don't have high expectations.
Right. And moving on to a little bit more of the Giants rookies. I mean, obviously you brought up Darian Beavers, but he's not currently playing. Um, Thoughts on Dane Belton and Micah McFadden? They're not really mentioned too much, but thoughts on both of those guys.
Yeah, so I have a story about Micah McFadden. So going into the draft, I was a big Leo Chanel fan. Linebacker out of um, Wisconsin. I was a big fan of Leo Chanel. We didn't get him, but we picked up Micah McFadden. Now this is another guy that when we picked him, I didn't know who he was. You know, all the linebackers that I scouted and things like that, I didn't know who Micah McFadden was. So, like I always do, I get on YouTube, I go to the tape, I look up Micah McFadden, Indiana, and I'm like, wow, this guy jumps off the screen. Big games against Penn State, big games against Michigan, things like that, and he's all over the place, flying all over the place. Is pretty good in coverage. He showed that in the last game a little bit, and he trusts his eyes. And I think the more he does that, the more he gains confidence, in this defense and with himself. I think he can be one of those guys that can be a tandem for the New York Giants in years to come. If Darian Beavers can also be that guy, but then we're looking at two inside linebackers, for years to come, possibly with those two. Dane Belton um, was another guy, one of those box type safeties, but can also play deep if he needed to. But you would rather have him up close and run support. He had the injury, didn't play a lick in preseason. Um, Finally got in the game and what? A fumble. The first play he ever had, fumble recovery. I do like that um, that Wink is using him, in run support. He's using them in pass coverage. I think that when we drafted him, like I said before, I thought he was going to be the replacement for, Julian Love. But I think he's solid. I think he's solid, especially where we picked him. He's contributing. I think he's going to be one of those foundational pieces, going forward for the New York Giants. But um, I'm happy with both of those guys' production, especially where they were drafted. If they're on the field and making plays, that's good for guys picked in like the fourth and fifth round.
And moving into the secondary, a position of concern, especially coming into the year and the depth and all these other different things, is the corner position. Um, how do you feel about the secondary and the depth? And I'll throw out some examples and some scenarios and stuff like that that's currently going on. I mean, Nick McLeod took more snaps this Sunday against the Seahawks than Darnay Holmes. Cordell
Hmm.
Flott hasn't been on the field.
Hmm.
Dory's playing well, and Fabian Moreau has been a shocking surprise. Thoughts on all that?
Yeah. So when the whole Bradbury thing happened, and then the main question was who's going to be CB2, and then is Adoree Jackson really a CB1? That was the main questions going into the season, and I think that Adoree Jackson proved that he is a CB1. Still doesn't have the interceptions, but he's Well, he never was a big interception guy anyway, but he's getting his pass defense. He's making plays. He's being more aggressive in run defense as well because he's coming up and making tackles too. I kind of don't want him to do that as much because he is frail, and every time he throws himself at somebody's knees, he can get hurt. Um, but I'm not worried as much as I was in the beginning of the season, and I don't know why. And that's the question because we don't have a stud at CB2. Well, we picked up Fabian Moreau, which he's been a pleasant surprise too. He's playing pretty well. He's like I think he's ranked in like the top 10 cornerbacks, and that's crazy to me because he was just sitting on his couch, when the season started. But it was a concern as far as beginning of the season. And then, like I said, we still have these same guys that we thought were going to be an issue, but somehow, some way, they stepped up. They stepped up. Wink Martindale, relies on him. He depends on him. He's not shying away from his scheme because there's a weakness at cornerback. And yeah, They went from the biggest question mark to one of the strongest parts of our defense. So yeah.
How do you feel specifically on Flott and Holmes? Because I've had this burn really inside feeling because everybody in training camp was going off, oh, Darnay Holmes, the interceptions, stuff
Yes.
like that. One
Yes.
of the things that caught my eye, because I was at a few training camp sessions, is that one of the routes he just got totally eviscerated by Richie James.
I remember that.
And, there's times where he's caught in a pick play and, he's not really a solid tackler. And that, once again, Nick McLeod was playing more snaps than him on Sunday against the Seahawks. And then also Cordell Flott, where, he was doing okay against the Panthers. Then they decided to pick on him a little bit more. And then, they finally just cut to Fabian Moreau and he gets injured and all these
Yeah.
different things. So your thoughts on the two of them?
Yeah. Darnay Holmes. Darnay Holmes was the training camp all star. He was a training camp all star. He was getting all these interceptions, and then week after week going into this in the season, it was like dud after dud performance. He's getting picked on like you said. And right now, Darnay Holmes surprises me the most because of I was fooled. I was fooled like a lot of people were fooled. I thought he was going to be one of these top slot corner guys, and he was doing all this stuff in practice. But that's why practice is practice and games are games. He didn't do any of that. When it came to the season, Cordell Flott is a young corner. He is just 20. He's very light, still coming into his own, still needs to get his grown man strength and things like that. Now, I think his upside is a lot better than maybe some people think. He's still a tall corner, still has a lot of athletic ability, has good ball skills. We just haven't got a chance to see it. If you watch a lot of LSU, which I do because I'm an SEC fan, I'm a big Alabama fan. I knew about Cordell Flott a little bit. He wasn't one of the top corners coming out of LSU because you had bigger names out there in LSU, but you can see that he had the traits and techniques. And sometimes, when you grab a kid that's that young, they develop more when it gets to the pros. And I think he has all the traits, all the talent. He just needs to grow. He needs to get a little bit bigger, uh, get a lot stronger, and I think everything else will fall into place. And then who was it? Was it another guy that you were asking?
Well, I was going to. I said Darnay, which you covered, and also
Flat.
Flott, and then maybe also as well just Nick McLeod since he's been playing a little
Okay.
bit more.
Nick McLeod, another guy that we picked up pretty much off of, I believe we picked him off for waivers. McLeod, and Justin Lane too. He's another one that we had. Nick McLeod, special teams guy. But in a pinch, like you said last week, he had more snaps than Darnay Holmes, and he did a pretty good job. He did a pretty good job. That's all I have for Nick McLeod though, man. I'm still trying to figure out who he is, and why was he available? Because he has the height, he has the length. He looks pretty quick. So why was he available? But again, a good find. Joe Shane, Brandon Brown, they can find guys, and we've been benefiting off that because we have no cap space. So all those budget guys we can get, I'm all here for it. And then if you can get production out of those guys, that's a home run in my opinion.
Plus on top of a plus. Moving into just probably about three more discussion topics, questions. DJ obviously has improved this year. Um, if you were to form an opinion, do you think he deserves to come back for another year? Do you think he deserves, and I'm not going into quarterback talk officially yet, but do you think he deserves to come back for another year, long term, which is really the minority, or just say, look, if you get a quarterback, just like get rid of DJ or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean that's a hard it's a hard question for me because like I said, I was ready to toss him because those 2 years were just horrible. I didn't see any kind of upside, to Daniel Jones. And then the season started, and I'm like, okay, well, he's not costing us any games. And then he's actually helping us win these games. And then what do? Because when you're looking at the draft, none of those guys are either promised to be there or actually pan out. All these big name quarterbacks. We don't know what's going to happen once they get into the NFL. So I take that into consideration. Also, I'm looking at, his numbers are not outstanding. Again, Daniel Jones is playing very, very well. He's showing progress. He's doing a lot of the things that a quarterback should do. Going through his progressions now. He's audible. He's identifying the mic. He's identifying the blitz and things like that. He's not putting the ball in harm's way, and that's what you expect a quarterback to do. And I think a lot of people are giving him a lot more credit, not necessarily than he deserves, but that's what quarterbacks are supposed to do. Capable quarterbacks. That's the things they should be doing, and some of those things are not worth the kind of praise that people are giving. But when I look at you know the future is not certain. We do have 9 more games, but it's all about the money at the end of the day for me. Um, Tyrod Taylor was brought in. A lot of people say to be the bridge quarterback. If we do draft another quarterback next year, he's an insurance policy. But I just want people to think about, you kind of see where Daniel Jones is headed. He's not going to lose you any games. He can make some plays. The QB spies are giving him a little bit of an issue now, but hopefully Kafka can help with that because there's ways to scheme against the QB spy, and we'll see what happens. Things like split zone and stuff like that. But I just to go with what Joe Shane said. There's 9 games left. There's 9 games left. Let's see what happens, and then we'll worry about 2023 when 2023 gets here. So I don't have an opinion whether we should just extend them right now or not, because I think once you start making those discussions and he holds all the cards, and then money becomes an issue. Because if you tell Daniel Jones flat out right now that we want you here, this, that, and the other, then his price goes up. And I think that's part of the chess game that Joe Shane is playing with him. When they ask you questions about Saquon Barkley, he's like, yeah, Saquon Barkley wants to be there, wants to be here. And we want Saquon Barkley. We want to talk about, extensions. When it came to Daniel Jones, he's like, well, pump your brakes. We got 9 games. Let's see what happens, because he knows how much money you have to dedicate to a quarterback, especially when they know um, that you're wanted, they're wanted, and stuff like that. So I think Joe Shane is smart. He's playing it smart. And trying to find the best deal for the Giants, because at the end of the day, $56 million is not a lot when you have a lot of roster spaces to fill.
Absolutely. Moving on to two more things. Obviously, yes, we still have 9 games left. But do you think, out of all the NFL, despite one team being still undefeated, that Brian Dable deserves Coach of the Year?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I'm biased as hell. I'll tell you that right now. The Giants were 4-13 last year. Nobody, well, I can't say nobody because Lou with G Nation to kill me if I said nobody thought we were going to be this good, Mr. 11-6. So shout out to him. But as far as you know, nobody was really thinking that the Giants were going to do what they're doing right now. And the going for two against Tennessee in Tennessee that first week, having his team ready, putting the staff together the way he's putting the staff together, winning despite of injuries, man. I absolutely believe he should be, the coach of the year, because a lot of people are saying, Nick Sirianni, but that's the healthiest team right there. The healthiest team in the league is the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm trying to think who else is in contention for coach of the year. I'm drawing a blank right now, but to me, absolutely Brian Dable. If say the Giants end up being 11-6, I think Brian Dable should be at the top of everybody's list, and especially if we make it to the playoffs. with 11-6 record. I think Brian Dable should be, the coach of the year. Absolutely, no debate.
Yeah, I mean, you could also, I mean, I forget who was coach of the year last year, but like for instance, Sirianni, yeah, they're undefeated. Also, the fact that they are way more talented than we are, way more
Absolutely,
talented. I picked them to win
absolutely.
the division before the season, and right now they're riding on that. Robert Saleh, he's doing a nice
That's
job,
another
but
guy
once
too.
again,
Yep,
I feel that they are way more talented than the New York
absolutely,
Giants are. I feel like the
absolutely,
Giants were coming into the season with one of the most under talented rosters in the NFL, and he's doing the most with it, which stands out.
absolutely. Even now,
Um,
yeah, even
yeah,
now, we like if you look at paper and you go down the list, the Giants are not, we're not world beaters on paper at all. That's man, it's all coaching. I give all the kudos to our coaching staff, absolutely. And Dable is the head ball coach right now, so I agree 100% with you.
and at the end of the day, once again, 9 more games left. Do you
Yep.
think the Giants will make a playoff berth?
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, Even if we go 50, 500, we still got double digit wins. And the way that the NFC is looking, I think 11 wins get you a playoff spot, a wild card spot, and that's what everybody's staying the same right now. I do think that I do think absolutely the Giants make the playoffs this year. It will be a catastrophic failure if we drop, the next 5 games or so, or something like that, and then we're, sitting at 500, and it's just crazy. But no, I absolutely think the Giants make the playoffs this year. I'm gonna go ahead and put that in the universe and see what happens in January.
Any final thoughts?
Um, I would like to talk to the fans and tell everybody to calm down, man. Stop panicking. We didn't get a wide receiver. Kadarius Toney is gone, but we were winning without those guys anyway. So stick to the plan. Joe Shane has a plan, unlike the previous regime. He told you what it was going to be at the beginning, and he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. He didn't want to kick cans down the road. He didn't want to go crazy with some instant success and make some mistakes. But we'll see what happens because I think Odell Beckham, those rumors, maybe it happens, maybe not. We'll see what happens with that. But yeah, that's my thing, man. Everybody calm down. The Giants are 6-2. We're heading to the Texans. If we can pull that one off, we're looking at 11-6, 12-5 possibly. And it's crazy to even say that. That's why I'm laughing now. But man, it's a realistic thing. The Giants could be in the playoffs in January and not just a fluke, you know, the best of the NFC least. No, we'll be contenders in the NFC Beast. Yeah.
Seems surreal just to talk about playoffs in this type of year.
Right. Right. The season's
Um,
usually over in
at
November.
this
This
point, yes,
time it's usually over. One and
we have
seven.
like slim hopes. Like, we're 3-7. We could try to get in the playoffs, via a wild card and being this and this team. But
Yeah, man.
if you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when the live stream pops for your drops. Also, sub up to Big Dash. He does some great work. Follow him on Twitter. He does some great stuff. Once again, he's only a few away from 1,000.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully, once again, we could get there as well. But big shout out
Absolutely.
to Dash for coming on. Great discussion overall. And hopefully, the Giants get into
Thanks
the
for having me.
playoffs and we see some progress down the line.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alex, man. And like I said, we're all the whole community, man. We need everybody. Support your fellow Giants content creators. I always say that, man. And again, thank you for having me on the show. Big fan of yours as well, man.
Peace, everybody.